They fined me $200 for a non-approved structure, even though the fence was 6 inches inside my deeded line. When they called the cops, they didn't know the parcel under their clubhouse mortgage already had my name on it. I watched the officer's pen hover before he realized the signature matched mine. Welcome to my channel. I'm Mike, civil engineer, 39, Dallas suburbs. I build infrastructure for a living. So yes, I read bylaws the way most people read menus. If you're new here, tap subscribe so you don't miss the next case. Tell me where you're watching from. Small town, big city, HOA country? It started the week after my father's funeral. He'd left me the old Craftsman on Meadow Trace, a modest blue siding house with a porch swing that creaked like memory. I promised him I'd keep the place decent. The HOA called it non-compliant. He'd once said, "Don't let them paper you to death." The day the citation came, white envelope, $150 fine for fence alignment variance, 2.4 foot. I heard his voice again. I paid it. Then they sent another, $300, for color inconsistency. The paint was bare number P220-6, same code as the approved list. I measured twice, photographed thrice, logged timestamps. When they cited me for leaving my trash bin visible for 14 minutes past pickup, I started reading the covenants, conditions, and restrictions like scripture. HOA President Carol Densmore lived 2 doors down. Always in coral jackets, clipboard in hand, her smile practiced. When I asked her why I'd been singled out, she said, "Some of us take community standards seriously, Mike." I counted 4 plastic flamingos in her yard, noted them quietly. The wound sharpened when they mailed a notice of enforcement intent. Certified, signature required, 30 days to remove or reconstruct. The fence I'd built with my father's post-hole digger, the one we'd set by hand one hot July afternoon. Noon, sweat and sawdust mixing with lemonade. I stared at that letter under the porch light, the paper glowing like a threat. The first night I barely slept. The second, I began collecting. Meeting minutes from 2018. Parcel maps from the county GIS, bank filings. I noticed a recurring code, parcel 12B, 0.14 acres, listed as common amenity easement. The signature on the grant deed, H. Densmore, LLC. Different first initial, same last name. By the 3rd week, I'd driven to the county recorder's office, paid $43.25 for certified copies. In the parking lot, I thumbed through until I found it. A quitclaim filed in 2019 transferring a sliver of land, the HOA's clubhouse lot, to a private holding company. It smelled like toner and coffee, the edges warm from the copier. I called my friend Tom Grayson, a property attorney with ink-stained cuffs and a voice like gravel. He laughed once, low and knowing. "Mike, if that filing's legit, their entire amenity rests on a defective chain of title. You might have leverage. Quiet title potential." Knowledge nugget number 1. In Texas, an HOA's authority over common property hinges on recorded ownership. If title lapses or transfers without member vote, enforcement standing can evaporate. Tom told me to stay quiet. Let them hang themselves with procedure. Document every call, every notice. So I did. Each time they left a voicemail, I transcribed the timestamp. Each meeting announcement, I printed the PDF. Meanwhile, Carol escalated. An inspector measured my mailbox height off by 0.7 inches. A board member suggested a wellness check because my porch light was on all night. 2 patrol cars idled outside once, then left when I waved. I didn't retaliate. I hosted a barbecue instead, invited neighbors. One of them, Mrs. Ellis, 82, mentioned she'd stopped using the clubhouse because they started charging $25 for bingo. That weighs. Sanu. Fees had always been voluntary. I asked for the HOA's financials, allowed under State Property Code Part 209-205. They delayed, then refused. That's when I knew this wasn't about paint or fences. It was about control. So I built the new fence anyway. Cedar, 72 feet long, 6 feet high. Posts set in concrete exactly 1 inch inside the survey line. Permit number DF 2314-2023, approved by the city on April 17th. I hung a small brass plaque near the gate. For Dad. 3 days later, Carol showed up with 2 officers. She handed me a notice, voice sharp. "You are in violation of Article 4, Section 9. We're recording this for the record." I replied, "So am I. Texas is a one-party consent state." The officers looked between us. One shrugged. "Ma'am, this seems civil," she hissed. "We'll see what the court says." That's when I realized they had no idea who held the paper on Parcel 12B. The moment they drove away, I sat on the porch and started a log entry. June 6th, 3:42 p.m. Carol arrived with officers, cited Article 4, no physical altercation, video saved locally and to cloud. It became habit. Every encounter, every slip of paper, every call went into the binder. By mid-June, it was 2 inches thick. Tabs labeled notices, recordings, permits, evidence. I stamped each page with the date in red ink, the way engineers do with revisions. 2 days later, I went to the county tax assessor's office. Turns out Parcel 12B hadn't paid property tax since 2020 because the title owner had changed and the HOA never updated its filing. Meaning technically, the common property wasn't common at all. I didn't tell anyone yet. I wanted to see how far they'd go. The next board meeting was a week later. Carol stood at the front with her usual poise. "We must preserve standards," she said. "Mr. Miller's fence violates height limits and sets a dangerous precedent." I raised my hand. Per Section 8.3b variance requests, most of all cases, to be reviewed before penalties. Did that happen? She ignored me, gavel tapping like a clock. "Vote to proceed with enforcement." 4 hands went up. Motion passed. Afterward, I overheard her whisper to a board member, "He'll fold. They always do." I smiled. I'd heard the same tone from contractors who underestimated soil load before a foundation cracked. Midway through June, I visited Tom's office downtown. He poured stale coffee into 2 mismatched mugs and slid a folder across the table. "Chain of title's solid," he said. "If you want to make noise, we can, but timing is everything. Let them document their overreach." I nodded. "So we wait?" "We let them sink into procedure," he said. "Every HOA implodes under its own paperwork." About that time, I started getting anonymous notes. One tucked under my windshield. "Sell before it gets ugly." Another mailed without a return address. "You're not welcome here." I reported them, logged them, dated and scanned them. My neighbor Lisa, a retired postal inspector, shook her head. "Tampering through mail threats is a federal offense," she muttered, jotting notes of her own. I realized I wasn't alone. If you've ever fought an HOA, you know it's not the big fines that break you. It's the daily drip of control. How far do you think a community association should be able to go before it crosses from protection into harassment? I'd really like to see your thoughts below. One evening, I caught Carol photographing my lawn from her SUV. I waved, then walked out with a tape measure. "You missed a spot," I said. She rolled up the window and sped off. I checked the HOA page later. New post. "Certain residents disregard rules affecting property values." No names, but my fence was in the photo. I archived the screenshot, metadata, and all. When I checked the bylaws again, I found something better. Board members must disclose conflicts of interest annually. I requested the filings. The secretary, a nervous guy named Ben, muttered, "We don't keep those." That's illegal under 209-0051 of the Texas Property Code. I smiled, thanked him, and wrote the note. Non-disclosure confirmed. Potential conflict. Knowledge nugget number 2. In many states, HOA boards are legally fiduciaries. Failing to disclose personal or financial conflicts can void board actions and expose members to civil liability. By early July, Tom's investigator found that H. Densmore LLC, the same name on Parcel 12B, was registered to Carol's husband Henry. He'd dissolved the company 3 months ago. The HOA still listed the clubhouse as collateral for a loan renewal, but the land technically sat in limbo. That night, thunder rolled over Meadow Trace. I sat at my desk, the smell of rain seeping through the screens, papers spread like a crime scene. I called Tom. "If the HOA doesn't own the clubhouse land," I said, "then every vote, every fine, every policy enacted there could be invalid." He exhaled. "Exactly. That's leverage." It was tempting to expose it then, but I waited. Let them keep pushing. The next morning, Carol posted a notice on my door. "Final demand. Remove fence within 10 days or HOA will take corrective action." I ran my fingers over the cheap ink, then folded it and placed it in the binder. 10 days was enough time to finish what we'd started. By July 10th, I'd quietly transferred Parcel 12B into a holding trust I managed. Meadow Civic Preservation, LLC, legally clean, notarized, recorded. When the dust settled, their clubhouse would be standing on my land. I didn't plan to evict anyone. I just wanted fairness. But leverage like that changes the tone of a conversation. Tom warned, "Once this goes public, she'll try to bury why." "Ooh," I said, "she's already tried." And I closed the binder, feeling its weight like a weapon made of paper. The 10th day hit like a gavel. Carol arrived early, around 7:15 a.m., with a clipboard and a landscaper in tow. I stood on the porch with a mug of coffee, steam rising like a signal. She motioned toward my fence. "We're proceeding with corrective action," she said, rehearsed and sharp. I gestured toward the survey marker, bright orange tape, 1 inch inside my deed. "You'll be trespassing, Carol," I said evenly, "and I'd hate for your liability carrier to hear about it." The landscaper hesitated, eyes flicking between us. She whispered something to him, then retreated to her car. The engine idled, then left. By mid-morning, my phone buzzed. Tom again. "Got confirmation," he said. "The HOA renewed its insurance under a false ownership affidavit. That's insurance fraud, Mike." He paused, letting the weight land. "You've got them cornered, but don't gloat yet." That night, I walked the property line with a flashlight. The grass shimmered with dew. The world felt balanced on a wire, quiet but charged. My neighbor Lisa called over the fence. "You're really going to take them on, huh?" I nodded. "Someone has to." The next week, a letter arrived. Intent to lien. They were claiming unpaid fines, $2,050. I laughed once, clipped the envelope open, and filed it under future evidence. Then I went online, verified with the county clerk that liens filed on invalid parcels could be vacated automatically. That's when I started drafting my notice of interest for Parcel 12B. Carefully, legally, notarized with witness. If you're still watching, tell me this. Have you ever dealt with an HOA that went beyond reason? Share what happened and how you fought back. It helps people see they're not alone, and maybe gives a few HOA lurkers reading these comments something to think about. Over the next 2 weeks, the harassment reached absurdity. A noise complaint at 9:01 p.m. from a neighbor who'd been at a wedding across town. A safety inspection by a board volunteer who wasn't licensed. And a Facebook post tagging me as uncooperative homeowner endangering community values. That one I screenshot with timestamps and server data. Meanwhile, Tom connected me with Emily Tran, a municipal auditor who moonlighted as a compliance consultant. She carried a thermos of black coffee everywhere, hair always in a loose bun, a dry wit that matched mine. "You're not crazy," she said after reviewing the documents. "They've misallocated common funds 3 years running. That's breach of fiduciary duty." She outlined a plan. File a quiet title suit only if they attempted to foreclose. Otherwise, keep the leverage sealed until a public forum forced transparency. "You want them to reveal themselves," she said, "not to think you're threatening." Knowledge, nugget number 3. In HOA law, selective enforcement, penalizing one homeowner while ignoring similar violations, undermines the board's legal standing. Courts often void fines and recover attorney fees when patterns are proven. By late August, we had patterns. Same 2 board members exempted from paint codes. One had overdue assessments quietly forgiven. Carol's husband reimbursed $8,200 for consulting on landscaping. I compiled receipts, all logged by date and check number. Tom grinned when he saw the binder. This is how we win. Slow, lawful, relentless. Carol, oblivious, scheduled an emergency board meeting to address ongoing non-compliance by Mr. Miller. The notice went out to 84 homeowners. It was perfect. A stage. I reserved a city inspector for that day, under the guise of verifying parcel data for a tax reassessment. Neutral authority secured. That night, I called Lisa. "You coming to the meeting?" "Wouldn't that miss it," she said. "I've been waiting to see Carol choke on her own rules." September 5th, 6:30 p.m. Meeting night. The air heavy, humid, cicadas humming like static. I wore a pressed shirt and carried the binder under my arm. Walking up the steps of the clubhouse, my land technically, I could smell the mix of mildew and coffee. Inside, maybe 40 residents murmured in folding chairs. Carol tapped her gavel. "We'll begin." She recited alleged violations, then called for vote authorization to pursue legal remedies. That's when I stood. Calmly, I placed a certified deed copy on the podium. "Before you vote," I said, "you should know the ground under this building doesn't belong to the HOA." The room fell silent, fans whirring overhead like waiting birds. Carol blinked. "That's absurd," she said. "County records filed July 10th, I replied. "Meadow Civic Preservation, LLC, deed 2023-2417. I own parcel 12B. Your clubhouse sits on it." The inspector, seated near the back, nodded. "County confirms transfer," he said. "Ownership verified." I watched Carol's knuckles whiten on the gavel. "You can't do this," she whispered. "I already did," I said softly. Outside, lightning flickered behind the trees. Inside, the power shifted so fast you could feel it in the floorboards. The silence after that moment felt endless, like every throat in that room had seized at once. Then came the murmur, a wave rolling through the chairs. Someone whispered, "Is that even legal?" Another, "Wait, does that mean we've been paying dues for property we don't own?" Carol's jaw trembled, but she recovered fast, tapping the gavel with a sharp crack. "Mr. Miller's statements are inaccurate and irrelevant. This is harassment." I slid a second document across the table. Title certification from the county clerk's office, embossed seal glinting under the fluorescent lights. "If I'm wrong," I said, "then the clerk, the assessor, and your own insurer are all wrong with me." Her voice cracked. "You think this makes you untouchable?" "No," I said. "It makes me accountable, which is more than I can say for this board." That line stuck. Half the room erupted in half-whispered applause. The inspector cleared his throat. "For record purposes," he said, "the documentation checks out. The parcel's ownership stands unless challenged through proper channels." His pen clicked once, loud as a pistol. Tom stood near the back, quiet but ready. I caught his eye and nodded once, our signal that the first reversal had landed clean. Visual beat number 1, the binder snapping shut, red tabs gleaming like warning lights. Carol called a recess, face pale, whispering urgently to the treasurer. I stepped outside into the humid dark, cicadas still buzzing, air thick with electricity. Tom joined me, smirking. "She's calling her lawyer right now." "Good," I said. "Let her." He handed me a small recorder. "Texas is one-party consent. You're covered, just in case she tries something stupid." I pocketed it, not planning to use it unless she crossed another line. Inside, Carol returned to the podium. "We will contest this filing," she said, voice shaking but trying to sound strong. "Meanwhile, enforcement actions continue." "Careful," I said. "Selective enforcement after notice of ownership dispute can qualify as bad faith action. Insurance carriers don't like that." Tom coughed to hide a laugh. At that point, the mood in the room fractured. Some residents stared at Carol with suspicion, others at me like I'd just blown a hole through their foundation. Both were true. As the meeting adjourned, several neighbors came over, Mrs. Ellis clutching her walker, eyes shining. "Your father would be proud, dear," she said. Lisa whispered, "That was surgical." I wanted to feel triumphant, but instead there was an ache under the ribs, a mix of adrenaline and grief. This wasn't just about winning. It was about making something right that had rotted quietly for years. Later that night, back home, I watched headlights crawl past the window, unmarked SUV idling too long at the curb. When I stepped outside, it rolled away. I logged it anyway. 2 days later, Carol sent a community alert email accusing me of fraud and criminal trespass on association land. I forwarded it to Tom and Emily. Both replied within minutes. Defamation and false claim. Save everything. Emily added, "The board's due insurance policy will implode if she keeps this up. Document the lies. Everyone." Knowledge nugget number 4, Director's Officers, a DO, insurance often excludes coverage for intentional misconduct, defamation, or acts committed in bad faith. When that coverage collapses, personal liability lands squarely on individual board members. That weekend, I printed every message, time-stamped, bound it into a new section labeled Defamation Evidence. The sound of the 3-hole punch, the click of the binder rings. It was mechanical, satisfying, controlled. Lisa dropped by Sunday afternoon with lemonade. You really think she'll back down? I looked toward the clubhouse. No, she'll double down first. People like her always do before the fall. By Monday morning, she proved me right. A notice taped to my door. Due to continuing violations, your property access to common areas is suspended. The clubhouse, my land, was now off limits to me. That was the spark that lit the next fuse. I drafted a letter titled Notice of Limited Access Consent. It stated, effective immediately, use of Parcel 12B by Meadow Trace, HOA, is conditionally permitted pending formal lease negotiation. Unauthorized exclusion of owner constitutes trespass under Texas Penal Code 430.05. I mailed it certified, return receipt requested, 1 copy to the HOA attorney, 1 to the insurance carrier. Then I waited. Tom called 3 days later, voice humming with energy. Mike, they sent a panicked email to the insurer. You've got their attention. The carrier's risk division just opened an internal review. Carol's about to realize what it means when paperwork fights back. He was right. The next HOA meeting notice arrived that afternoon. Agenda item: discussion of property title issue. Public, mandatory, and, per state law, recorded. Perfect stage for the showdown. If you were sitting in that room, watching your HOA crack under its own arrogance, what would you have done? Confront them directly or let the regulators handle it? Drop your answer below. I read every one. I circled the date on my calendar, October 2nd, 6 p.m., and drew a small star beside it. The day they'd learn who really owned the ground they'd built their little empire on. By the time October rolled in, the air had thinned into that crisp Texas lull before fall actually arrives. The date, October 2nd, loomed like a court summons. I'd polished my shoes, pressed my shirt, and reviewed the binder twice. Emily had prepared a brief summary of the HOA's financial discrepancies, neatly tabbed with red flags. Tom had printed affidavits showing their insurance misrepresentation, all lawful, all verifiable. The clubhouse parking lot was packed that evening. Pickup trucks, sedans, a couple of golf carts, neighbors clustered in small circles, voices low. The tension was tactile. I heard someone mutter, "Guess we'll finally see what this mess is about." Inside, the board table gleamed under fluorescent light, 5 members seated like jurors who knew the verdict already but were afraid to say it. Carol looked exhausted, foundation too thick, eyes red-rimmed. She opened with a brittle smile. "We appreciate everyone's patience tonight," she began. "There have been rumors circulating about property ownership. We'll address them briefly." I waited until she finished her first sentence, then stood from the third row. "Rumors are cleared by evidence, not repetition," I said, walking calmly to the microphone. "Would the secretary read agenda item 3 aloud?" He fumbled. "Discussion of Parcel 12B ownership and, lease concerns." "Thank you," I said. "For transparency, I've invited a county assessor's representative and a compliance auditor." Emily nodded from the back, her thermos in hand. The assessor's rep, a tall man in a gray windbreaker, raised a folder. "County confirms Mr. Miller's trust as the recorded owner," he said evenly. "That's public record." The room erupted, some in applause, some in disbelief. Carol slammed the gavel. "Order! This meeting is for board discussion only." Emily stepped forward. "Then I recommend you enter executive session and notify your insurer immediately, because continued operation on a privately held parcel voids liability coverage." That landed like a grenade. Carol froze, eyes darting to her attorney seated 2 chairs away. He leaned toward her and whispered something that made her face drain white. We'll take this under advisement," she stammered. The neighbors murmured louder now. Lisa leaned over to Mrs. Ellis, whispering, "I told you he wasn't bluffing." That's when Carol lost control. "You think you can hold this community hostage?" she shouted. "This neighborhood was built before I inherited my father's deed," I interrupted, "and before your husband transferred land out of association control. I'm not holding anyone hostage, Carol. I'm protecting them from you." There was no gavel strike this time, only her silence. If you've ever had to stand in a public meeting and call out power to its face, tell me, did it shake you or did it calm you? Because that night, I felt both. Drop your story below. Someone else out there probably needs it. The inspector, same one from months earlier, stepped up uninvited. "For the record," he said, "unauthorized possession or maintenance activity on a parcel without owner consent can be classified as trespass. Suggest the board suspend all enforcement tied to this property until resolved." Carol barely nodded. The rest of the board stared at their hands. As the meeting adjourned, residents came forward, some thanking me, others apologizing for not believing sooner. One man handed me a flash drive. "You'll want this," he whispered. Audio from their private session last month. Later at home, I loaded the files. Carol's voice was unmistakable. "If he keeps pushing, we'll fine him until he moves or breaks." That was all I needed to prove intent. The retaliation hit the next morning. 3 new citations appeared in my mailbox: unauthorized signage, lawn ornament obstruction, and improper recording device placement. It was laughable. Still, I logged each one. Photos, timestamps, everything. Then came the anonymous posts. "Miller's a scammer. He's bankrupting the HOA." I traced IP logs with Emily's help. Most came from the clubhouse Wi-Fi. That weekend, I woke to the sound of gravel crunching. A flashlight beam swept across the yard. I stepped outside with my phone recording. A figure ducked behind Carol's SUV. I shouted, "Police are already on the way," even though they weren't yet. The light vanished, tires squealed, and the street went quiet again. I filed a report anyway. Officer Daniels, the same one from the first fence incident, arrived, notebook in hand. "You've had enough of this," he said. "Want me to run extra patrols?" I nodded. "Appreciate it." The lowest point came 3 nights later. A letter slid under my door. "You won't win. Sell and go." No signature. I sat on the floor, the paper trembling in my hands. Then I looked at Dad's photo on the mantel. The one with us holding the fence post together. I whispered, "Not leaving, old man. Not till it's clean." After that night, fear turned into focus. The binder was no longer evidence. It was armor. Every document, every timestamp, every name had purpose. Tom called it bureaucratic revenge, but I called it survival. And somewhere deep down, beneath the fight, there was still that promise I'd made at a hospital bedside, to keep our home decent. Decent didn't mean quiet. It meant just. 2 days after that threat slipped under my door, the air in Meadow Trace changed. You could feel it, neighbors lingering longer on sidewalks, quiet nods replacing gossip. Word had spread. The clubhouse sat on my land. Carol's empire was wobbling, and everyone could sense the tilt. Tom called that morning. "We're ready for the set piece," he said. "You want this to go clean, lawful, and public. The inspectors already confirmed attendance. The county clerk's rep too." "Perfect," I said. "No shouting match, no surprises, just facts." The showdown was set for October 12th, a special open meeting to address property irregularities. Carol probably thought she could spin it back her way. She'd always believed control came from posture, not truth. When I walked into the clubhouse that evening, the place buzzed with tension. Folding chairs packed the hall. The smell of burnt coffee lingered. The fluorescent lights flickered slightly, like the building knew it shouldn't be standing here. Carol sat at the table, back straight, legal pad in front of her. Her husband Henry lingered behind, arms folded, wearing that thin smirk of a man who'd once outmaneuvered contractors for a living. I set my binder on the podium. The sound, the snap of the clasp, cut through the whispers. Carol began, voice rehearsed. "Mr. Miller has made certain claims which, upon review, lack merit. The HOA retains owners. HIP of all amenities. These so-called filings," I cut her off gently, "are certified. County document number 2023-2417, the one filed under your husband's now-dissolved LLC." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I didn't raise my voice, didn't gloat. I simply flipped to the right tab and slid out the page. "Your loan renewal affidavit lists Parcel 12B as collateral under the HOA's name. That's misrepresentation to an insurer." The compliance inspector spoke up from his seat near the door. "If those filings are correct, the board must immediately suspend all enforcement activity tied to the parcel or risk civil liability." Carol gripped the edge of the table. "This is outrageous," she said. "We'll take you to court." Tom's dry voice floated from the back. "You'll need standing first. Hard to have that when your clubhouse isn't on your property." The crowd erupted again, this time in laughter. Visual beat number 2. Carol's hand trembling as the gavel slips from her grip, clattering against the table, echoing through the hall. I stepped forward, calm. "For the record," I said, "I'm not here to evict anyone. I'm offering the HOA a lawful lease, $1 a year, conditional on open books, fair enforcement, and term limits for board positions." Someone from the crowd shouted, "That's better governance than we've ever had." Carol sank into her chair. Henry whispered something, but she shook her head, eyes distant. The room smelled of toner, old carpet, and realization. I could feel my pulse steadying as the inspector took notes. Then he looked up and said, "I'm noting public acknowledgement of ownership and proposed reform. Meeting minutes will reflect that." That was it. The moment everything turned. Reversal number 1 completed, leverage secured, legality validated. Afterward, I stepped outside. The air felt light, crisp, honest. Lisa joined me under the flickering streetlight. "You didn't even raise your voice," she said. "Didn't need to," I replied. "Paperwork did the shouting." She smiled. "You think she'll step down?" "She'll fight a few more bias," I said. "But the insurer and the county are already circling." And sure enough, they did. Within 48 hours, an internal audit request hit the HOA's email server, originating from their own insurance carrier. Someone had tipped them off about inconsistent declarations. That's when the dominoes started falling. But before we get there, I want to know something. If you were in my shoes, holding the leverage that could end an HOA's corruption, would you push for punishment or reform? Comment what you'd choose. The way you'd handle power says everything. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks. The fence outside glowed faintly in the moonlight, casting long shadows across the grass. The same fence that started it all. Inside, on my desk, the binder sat closed. On top of it, the brass plaque Dad and I had polished years ago. For Dad. Built straight, built fair. I didn't know it yet, but the next morning, the press would call, the insurer would freeze the HOA's account, and the domino collapse would begin. By sunrise the next day, the neighborhood group chat was on fire. Screenshots of the county deed were circulating, along with photos of Carol's stunned face from the meeting. By 9 a.m., the HOA's website had gone dark. Maintenance mode. By noon, a Channel 8 news van idled at the subdivision entrance, the reporter asking neighbors if they'd ever questioned their HOA's transparency. Emily called first. "They're spiraling," she said. "The insurer's internal audit triggered an automatic hold on disbursements. They can't pay legal fees or landscaping contracts until the ownership issue clears." "That's checkmate," I said. "Not yet," she warned. "They'll try to spin it politically. Expect a smear before the end of the day." She was right again. By 3 p.m., an unsigned community update hit everyone's inbox. "Mr. Miller's false claims are under review. Please, refrain from speculation and remember the HOA acts for the good of all homeowners." Within minutes, replies flooded in, dozens of homeowners demanding financial transparency and board resignations. It was beautiful chaos. That evening, Lisa and I stood at the edge of the cul-de-sac watching reporters pack up. "You ever think it'd get this big?" she asked. "Didn't want it to," I said. "I just wanted my fence." 2 days later, the insurer's regional manager arrived unannounced for an audit interview. I met him at my porch, binder ready. He was polite, professional, shirt crisp, breath smelling faintly of mint and stress. "Mr. Miller," he said, "we're verifying a few representations made by the Meadow Trace Board. Did they disclose that Parcel 12B is no longer held by the association?" "No," I said, "but they filed an affidavit claiming they did." He sighed. "That's what I thought." He scribbled notes and left. Within 48 hours, Carol resigned. The announcement came through a one-line email. No apology, no explanation. Henry followed a day later, citing family reasons. The treasurer and secretary submitted their resignations by the weekend. In 7 days, the board was gone. That Sunday, I sat on the porch with coffee while Mrs. Ellis shuffled up the walkway holding a newspaper. "You made the front page," she said, chuckling. The headline read, "Homeowner uncovers HOA title scandal. Board steps down amid audit." I laughed, then exhaled. "Guess that's one way to prune a tree," I said. "Just make sure what grows back's worth keeping," she replied. If you've ever watched corruption collapse under its own paperwork, tell me, was it satisfying or sad? because I felt both. Drop a thought below. It helps remind folks there's a real cost to every victory. Over the next week, the domino collapse continued. The HOA's bank froze accounts pending new officer signatures. The insurer's audit expanded into a full review of 3 years of finances. The city zoning bees. Board reopened a dormant complaint about unpermitted clubhouse renovations. Everything they'd buried was clawing its way back into daylight. Tom called midweek. Press is asking for comment. You want to speak? I paused. Not yet. Let the paper trail tell the story first. Good instinct, he said. Public patience wears better when the facts speak slow. Visual beat number 2's echo lingered in my head, the gavel clattering to the floor, and now in its place came something quieter, papers rustling in the hands of neighbors finally reading what had been hidden. By the end of October, the community voted to appoint an interim committee. Lisa was nominated. She resisted at first, then said, "If I'm going to complain for years, might as well help fix it." I smiled. That's how reform starts. The committee called me in as consultant for property transition. Emily attended with her usual thermos. She slid across a proposal, transparent accounting, annual audits, recorded meetings, and term limits of 2 years for any board seat. Make it official, I said. Tie it to the land lease. That became the reform deal's foundation. Before we finalized it, though, I wanted an independent validation, a neutral voice to make sure it stuck. I called Officer Daniels, the same cop who'd shown up during my first fence incident. Mind attending one last meeting? I asked. Just to confirm everything's lawful. He agreed. November 4th, the same clubhouse. Cleaner now, quieter. The new committee sat at folding tables. Daniels leaned against the wall, uniform pressed, nodding occasionally. I read the lease aloud. Parcel 12B, leased to Meadow Trace Community Association for $1 annually, conditional on transparency reforms effective immediately. Daniels signed as witness. When I handed Lisa the pen for the final signature, her hand trembled slightly. "You sure about this?" she asked. "Positive." "What?" I said. "Leverage isn't for revenge, it's for repair." And just like that, the war was over. The pen's click echoed across the empty clubhouse as Lisa finished signing. Daniels nodded once, tore the duplicate from his pad, and handed it to me. "All above board," he said. "Honestly, wish more neighborhoods handled things this clean." "Clean was the goal," I said. The smell of fresh ink mixed with floor polish. Outside, kids' laughter drifted from the park. The same HOA that once sent quiet hours warnings at 7:05 p.m. was now planning a fall festival. Small victory, big meaning. 2 weeks later, the insurer's audit closed. Their letter, stamped and signed, declared that the prior board's misconduct voided coverage for acts of knowing misrepresentation. Translation: Carol and her circle were on their own. Fines, repayments, and restitution claims followed. Henry's LLC faced a separate state inquiry for improper asset transfers. It wasn't vengeance, it was consequence. Meanwhile, the reform charter passed with 84% homeowner approval. For the first time, budgets were published online. Meeting minutes posted within 48 hours. Term limits enforced by automatic bylaw sunset clauses. And every document bore a small footer. Verified per Meadow Civic Preservation Lease, 2023. Visual beat number 3. The community's new banner being raised over the clubhouse, painted by the neighborhood kids, reading, "Our Meadow, our rules, together." A month later, I stood by my fence again, now draped in winter light. The brass plaque glinted faintly. Lisa came by with thermos coffee, steam curling between us. "Never thought I'd see neighbors smile at a board meeting," she said. I grinned. We turned complaints into policy. That's progress. The local paper followed up with another headline. Meadow Trace Reborn, HOA Scandal Sparks Governance Reform. They quoted me saying, "Accountability isn't revenge, it's maintenance." Dad would have liked that line. If you believe I fought the right way, and this is how it should end, say a few words in the comments for your friend. Subscribe, so future videos reach you first. As responsible citizens, share this story so others learn and get inspired, because that part's on us. The next week, during a community cleanup, a young couple stopped me near the mailbox. "You're the fence guy, right?" the husband asked, half grinning. Guilty, I said. He held up a small permit form. We're building a little garden shed. Just wanted to make sure we file it right this time. I laughed. You just did. That's how it starts. Later, as dusk settled, I walked past the clubhouse one last time. Through the window, I saw Lisa presiding over a meeting. Papers stacked, residents talking respectfully, no gavel slamming, no fear. The kind of order that grows from trust, not threat. I paused by the steps, ran a hand over the railing, and thought about my father's words. Don't let them paper you to death. He was half right. Sometimes, the right paper saves you. The next morning, a new envelope arrived in the mail. Not a fine, but a thank you card. Inside, 20 signatures and one note from Mrs. Ellis. You didn't just fix a fence, dear. You fixed us. I placed it in the binder, final page, closed the cover. On the spine, in neat black ink, I wrote, Case closed. HOA called cops when I built a fence. Then, for the first time in months, I turned off the porch light early and let the night stay quiet.